Alright, so today we're going to talk about the supports. So let's talk about Lost Ark in general real quick. This game does not have the Holy Trinity. This is not a tank healer DPS game. This is a damage dealer and support game. Now because there's no tank role, that means everybody has to do a little bit more than just their one job. What that means for supports is, one, they cannot spam heal. They require gauge to use heals on like a normal MMO. They actually have to do things like shielding, and also to get the ability to do heals, they gotta build up their specialty gauge. That requires them to be hitting enemies. So on top of just attacking and building gauge, supports also supply a good amount of stagger, and they also can do counters for the party. This makes support being a very active role in the game as opposed to just a heal bot on the side. So instead of actively providing heals, supports generally offer more shields. If you're a paladin, your shields do give a small heal at the end. So moving on, I want to talk about the differences between the specialty gauge between Bard and Paladin, the only two classes we have in NA for support at this current time of this video. So first off, we have Paladin. They only have one gauge to fill up, and then after that they can activate their Blessed Aura. So when Paladins activate, they get a circle around them, and then party members within it will get a damage buff and also healing over time while in it. You can basically think of it as a giant campfire. Lastly, just ignore that blue buff down there at your specialty gauge. But now let's talk about Bard. Now, unlike Paladin, Bard has to choose between dropping a heal or a damage. The main reason for this is the potency of both of them. The Bard's heal heals a lot in a smaller amount of time, which allows them to save party members who might have taken too much damage at once. But if they don't need heals, you can also just pop your damage buff. And just like the heal, the damage buff is more potent. At the start of the buff, there is a additional bigger buff. This synergizes really well with burst damage classes and also those who use Androphil. And then also with Bard, instead of filling one bubble like Paladin, there is 3 bars to fill. That means your heals and your buff have 3 different levels to them, so they can be a level 1, 2, or 3. And they will heal more or offer a better buff. So as you can see already so far, Paladin is a little more automated, it's a lot more linear. You don't really have to choose anything, you just pop it and go. Meanwhile, the design of the Bard specialty gauge makes it so they have to decide if they want to heal, if they want to buff, if they want to hold it and maybe get a high level of whatever one. It gives them more choices, but it also gives them more flexibility. And overall, I think it just gives them a higher ceiling. Let's talk about the things I like about Bard first. Bard has a few skills with tenacity on it, which I generally call super armor. What that means is when you're casting these skills, you cannot be interrupted, you cannot be knocked over, you can just continue casting. This gives Bards the ability to cheese certain mechanics, not get knocked over, not get knocked out of the map in certain Legion raids, and overall it is just something I really like about Bard that Paladin just does not have in their normal kit. Now another thing I really like about Bard is, even though their ults function same, they provide their party with a large shield and they give themselves gauge. Difference is Bard, even if there's misses, they get the gauge. If a Paladin doesn't hit the enemy with it, they do not get the gauge. Yes, they still shield the party, but they're still losing like 75% meter that you could have gotten just because the boss moved out the last second. Alright, so now let's talk about Paladin. So even though Paladin only has one shield, that one shield has a huge range on it. Now even though Bard has 2 shields, one of them requires their allies to be really close to them for them to get the shield. So as a Paladin, you don't have to chase down your damage dealers to try to shield them, you just pop it. The same actually also applies to their Holy Aura heal. That is a huge bubble around him where you can just stand around your allies. For the Bard heal, it is a smaller heal that is on the ground that cannot be moved. But back to the shield. Now since Paladin's Holy Aura healing is not as potent as Bard, Paladin's shields will actually give a small heal at the end. And yet there's still one more thing to talk about with shield. And that is that it can cleanse, so it can get rid of debuffs, which is something Bard just cannot do at all. Paladin is also a much more tanky class, which should be no surprise to anybody really. So even though it is within the meta for a Bard to run heavy armor, for Paladin, heavy armor is a lot more optional, which leaves them room to add another engraving on it that would benefit the party more than just themselves. So now we talk about the current state of supports in Lost Ark, which is basically the shortage. This is the conversation that's here to stay. Artist isn't going to fix it. I can talk about my Brill experience recently. So like earlier this week, I did a 1 through 4. We spent about a good hour, maybe even longer, looking for supports. And we cleared 1 to 4 in that time it took to actually just find a support. And mind you, I joined a party with 1 support already. There was, at any point in time during that search, there was anywhere from 8 to 10, even probably more lobbies just sitting there with 1 support looking for that other support. So what this results in is, even though people talk about transformation classes being the cheapo classes, support, that is the true cheapo route this game. Because the desperation that people have to get support in their party outweighs any sort of gatekeeping that you would see with a damage dealer. So like 4x3 or less in Brill, probably even less, they're in. lack of gems, they're in. Low roster level, they're in. Rainbow stats, they're in. It just doesn't matter to a point with supports because people rather just take a really sus support and just try the gate and see where it goes, as opposed to just sitting there waiting in Party Finder and not trying at all. Now, just to be clear, this isn't me saying, hey, just be a cheapo support. I'm just saying this is the result of the support shortage. The only real con I could say about playing a support is just doing solo content. So things like Chaos Dungeon, for example, it is not that great on support until you get Betrayal set or Charm if you want to run Charm. Either way, those things like that, they're pretty miserable on support until you get set up. Now, once you get that set, my supports kind of clear Chaos Dungeon just as fast as everybody else, if not faster. The only time that is not true is when you get a red portal in Chaos Dungeon, and then you're in there forever no matter what build you're at. Now, when it comes to the DPS builds on them, it's going to be the exact opposite Party Finder experience, where no matter how good you prep the character, you're probably just going to be gatekept. So yeah, all of that covers my major differences that I feel when playing the two classes and what I like about each one. Now the truth is, I wouldn't have played either one of these classes if there wasn't a support shortage. I played it just so I can have easier runs, easier time in matchmaking, and just get my weekly tasks done quicker, all my raids up. But the truth is, I do enjoy playing these classes just because it is a different experience than the damage dealers. It's a nice break from just chasing your damage numbers. It's a lot more chilled, it's a lot more relaxed. And for me personally, I like to mix up my roster. I don't want them all to be the same. You know, I've seen people one-trick so many classes. You know, I've seen Sharpshooter one-tricks, I've seen Gunslinger one-tricks, I've seen Bard one-tricks, you know, just people who just want to play just this one class 6 times over. I can't do that. I will burn out so quick. And even just having 6 damage dealers would probably be a little bit more burnout for me. So having a couple supports in there is really good for just experiencing these fights in a different perspective. I think even in my last video, the transformation one, I did mention that even though I do enjoy both these classes, or both those classes, so Shadowhunter and Scouter, I will eventually drop one for sure, just because the classes are just so similar and I want my roster to be a bit different. So a question you might ask by now is, after me saying all this, what class do I prefer? And I have a feeling I know what your conclusion is going to be, because even when I was recording this video, I realized how many pros I had for Paladin, that it seems like I probably would prefer Paladin more, but the truth is, I actually prefer Bard. The first reason is that I overall prefer its identity gauge. I like the 3-bar system, I like having that flexibility to it. And then the other big thing is going to be the tenacity move, the ones with super armor, the ones I talked about earlier, where you don't get knocked over, you don't get interrupted. Like every time I'm on Paladin and I can't do that to avoid getting knocked over or anything like that, I just wish I was on my Bard. And also an extra third point to the fact that not hitting with my ultimate gives me gauge. So yeah, when it comes down to it, I would definitely pick Bard over Paladin for myself. Now when Artist comes out, I will be trying it out, and there is a chance it could replace Paladin if I do find it more enjoyable than it. Because on my topic earlier about diversifying my roster, I do not want to play 3 supports. I think 2 is a good amount. Anything more, I think there's just too many other classes I want to try, want to play. Because yeah, I'm already having enough roster issues here. The next 4 characters coming out, I want to try and play. Not only that, there are some classes out like Gunslinger and maybe even War Dancer that I don't think I gave a fair enough shot. Because when I tried them, I was just really early into the game. And yeah, that's it. That's my experience and how I feel about the sports so far in NA. I hope this helps you kind of understand the sports a little bit more, maybe help you decide which one you want to give a try. Because yeah, I really do recommend that everybody try playing support, just to get a feel for it, and also, why not? They're super easy, they're super cheap, they're just a nice character to have.